Limu used the art of guidance, swiftly channeling the trace of magic left by Li Qing in his body to his eyes. A sudden mutation arose at this moment. The surroundings instantly became eerie, just as Limu was starting to feel a little uncertain. His back felt cold again. Immediately, the alarm bells of danger kept ringing in his mind. A pale face suddenly appeared in front of him. It was a face without any color of blood. Close to Limu, those white eyeballs were staring straight at him. They chuckled strangely with a mocking sound. In the dark night, that ghostly face grinned. Suddenly, it blew a breath forward, and then pounced towards Limu. At first, Limu only felt a gust of cold wind blowing on his face, as if it had frozen his soul. He looked at the ghostly face getting closer and closer. He wanted to escape, but he couldn't even take a simple step forward. Limu finally realized that he had really encountered a ghost. And this is not the lowest level sinister imp. This is an evil spirit that can manipulate energy to attack. Limu could not control his body. He watched as the ghostly creature approached slowly. He felt extremely anxious. Just then, he suddenly felt a warm sensation in his chest. It was a paper talisman that Li Qing had given him. Limu listened to her words and carried it with him at all times. Just as the ghostly claws were about to touch Limu, the talisman burst into golden light, enveloping Limu and sending the approaching ghost flying away. At this moment, the warm stream flowing from Limu's chest surged into his body, driving away the coldness within him. It also enabled him to regain control of his body. Limu did not hesitate at all. He used the fastest speed in his life, spread his legs, and ran wildly towards the county yamen. The ghostly face watched Limu fleeing into the distance, grinning widely. "You can't run away," it said, then took a deep breath, causing its stomach to bulge high. Then it made a grimace and sprayed towards Limu. In just a short time, Limu had only run a dozen steps before he felt a chill all over again. His body couldn't move again. The ghostly creature drifted to his side and said, "Why aren't you running? It's so much fun. You are now at your wit's end. Anyway, you won't live much longer. How about being a good person today and offering your 3 souls to me as a sacrifice? How can I further advance my cultivation level?" At this moment, a thunderous sound of Buddhist chants fills the air. Limu's ears twitched as the sound of Zen entered. He suddenly felt that he could control his body again. He looked up ahead. He saw a monk in the moonlight. The monk held a bowl in his left hand and a Zen staff in his right hand. Slowly walking towards this direction, Limu ran quickly towards the monk. "Master, save me." The face of the ghost revealed a fierce expression. "Where did this wild monk come from? Dare to ruin my plans." The monk calmly recited a Buddhist mantra. "I am Shindu, a monk from the Golden Mountain Temple. I am not a wild monk." At this moment, the temperature dropped sharply around me. Suddenly, a gust of gloomy wind rose. The voices of spirits became even more eerie. "I don't care if you're from the Gold Mountain Temple or some other Silver Mountain Temple. If you insist on ruining my good fortune today, I will swallow your soul whole." Limu was blown off balance by the cold gust of wind and could only huddle behind the monk for safety. The monk stood steadfast, unmoved. He said compassionately, "Humans and ghosts follow different paths. However, your act of snatching souls goes against the natural order. It would be better for this humble monk to save you by giving you a proper spiritual enlightenment. Good, this will also eliminate the negative karma. May you be reborn in the Pure Land." The demonic creature chuckled when it heard that. "Well then, let's see if you have the capability for that." After speaking, a black fog suddenly burst out from its body. Enveloping its figure, the black fog churned and rolled unpredictably. It spreads outward at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it enveloped Limu and the monk within it. But as the black mist was about to touch them, it seemed to encounter some kind of obstruction. It could not advance any further. The monk said disappointedly, "Do you really not want the poor monk to help you? It is what it is." The monk handed the alms bowl to Limu and said, "Young benefactor, could you hold on to this for a moment for the poor monk?" Limu took the alms bowl without hesitation. He just didn't know what material the alms bowl was made of. It was much heavier than he had imagined. The monk held the Zen stick and looked at the dark mist. The monk asked again, "Do you allow me to save you?" There was no sound coming from the dark mist. Suddenly, a black claw appeared and reached towards Limu's body. Limu raised his hand instinctively to block. The bowl in his hand suddenly emitted a faint golden light. The ghostly claw reaching towards him disintegrated upon contact. At this moment, the compassionate expression on the monk's face disappeared. Instead, he looked rather frustrated and angry. "Is this your response? In that case, let this humble monk guide you." He grasped the Zen staff with both hands. In an instant, he pounced into the black mist. Limu then heard a series of clanging noises coming from within the black mist, as well as the monk's angry scolding. "I offered you a toast and you didn't accept. Now you have to drink the penalty." Did this monk give you face? Those who are unappreciative are not worthy of face. You didn't even bother to inquire about my name, Shindu. By letting you see me in person, it's already a courtesy. Helping you is showing you face. Many people seek help from this humble monk, but this monk can't be bothered to assist. You are pretending in front of this humble monk. This humble monk will spare your dog life for now. If you remain unrepentant later, this humble monk will make you vanish into thin air. Limu was stunned in place. Is the style of this painting somehow off? The black mist dispersed quickly. The monk's figure reappeared. He was holding a Zen staff in one hand. The compassionate expression returned to his face. He walked up to Limu and took the alms bowl. Smiling, he said, "Thank you, benefactor." Limu swallowed his saliva and muttered, "You're welcome." The monk recited the Buddhist chant again. Amitabha Buddha, benefactor, there is no need to worry. The evil spirit has already been subdued by this humble monk. This humble monk will use Buddhist teachings to reform it and guide it onto the right path. Having said that, he then turned around and left, but he didn't take a few steps. It seemed like he remembered something again. He turned back and took off a string of Buddhist prayer beads from his wrist. He handed it to Limu and said, "I, the monk, have lost all the 7 pieces of pua. But the flesh body contains feelings of sadness and joy. It should be the method of Taoist cultivation that has been practiced. However, the donor's magical powers are limited and cannot control these ghosts and monsters. This Buddhist prayer beads are given to the donor to protect them from ordinary evil spirits and demons." Limu subconsciously took the Buddhist prayer beads. He stared at the shining prayer beads in his hand, lost in thought. It took him a while to react. He quickly bowed and said, "Thank you, master, for saving my life." However, the monk's figure had disappeared without him noticing when. Right after that, a Buddhist chant came from the void, Amitabha Buddha. Helping others is helping oneself. Helping others is helping oneself. The monk's voice grew fainter. Eventually it completely disappeared. Limu put the rosary on his hand. He sighed. People and ghosts are all showing off. Only I, Limu, am the one getting beaten up. Moreover, having a rosary may not necessarily guarantee safety. The matter of the 7 pa must be resolved as soon as possible. He took out the paper talisman from his chest. The magical power contained in the paper talisman has been almost depleted. This time, we must thank the leader properly. Thanks to the talisman she gave me. Limu's eyes were filled with tears. I wonder what kind of mood he is in right now. He carefully put away the talisman. The next morning came quickly. Limu got up from bed, and after a simple wash, he stood at the door waiting. He was waiting for Li Qing. Li Qing has the habit of morning exercise. The street at the entrance is her must-pass route. At this moment, the neighboring courtyard door was open. Lu Hanyan came out with a basin of dirty water. The first thing she saw was Limu. She still didn't give Limu a good face. After giving a cold snort, she twisted her little butt and walked back to the courtyard, heavily closing the courtyard gate. Limu instantly felt angry. He was about to swear, but then thought better of it and calmed down. Let it go. There are important matters today. I won't argue with you. I don't know how long it has been. Li Qing finally appeared. She was dressed in a white robe. Her facial features are still so delicate and charming. Limu saw that Li Qing finally arrived. He quickly stood up and held her hand. "Leader, I encountered a ghost again last night." Li Qing expressed surprise. "Could you help me deal with the sinister imp again?" Limu shook his head repeatedly, recalling the encounter with the evil spirit last night. He vividly described the scene with sound and color. "That was what I saw with my own eyes. First, a strange ghost appeared last night. Then the ghost did this and that to me. After that, an old monk appeared. After that, the high monk did this and that. Finally, he defeated the resentment imp." Li Qing felt a bit of a headache from being nagged by him. Her face froze slightly. After a moment, she said somewhat uncertainly, "Those who can control an energy to condense into ghost claws. It should not be an ordinary resentment imp. Its cultivation level is already extremely high. Only one step away from becoming a third-realm resentment imp. Both Buddha cultivation and Taoist cultivation have methods to restrain demons and ghosts." Li Qing suddenly looked at Limu and said, "Let me see that string of Buddhist prayer beads." Limu immediately reached out his hand. "This is the Buddhist prayer beads that the monk gave me," he said. After a moment of contemplation, Li Qing said, speaking solely of magical powers, "I'm afraid even I am not a match for the resentment imp. Fortunately, we have the expert from the Buddha cultivation. Otherwise, you wouldn't see me today." Limu asked anxiously, "Doesn't that mean I have no way to restrain those demons?" Li Qing sighed and said, "There is a way. But your magical power is too low. You cannot learn any magical powers. And Taoism spell. Casting a Taoism spell does not require a strong magical power. But Taoism spell exists in any sect or faction. It is a secret technique that only a very small number of people can master. I do not understand either. Moreover, anyone who learns Taoism spell must make a vow. Our Taoism spell cannot be spread without authorization. This vow is different from an ordinary oath. It is more like a certain type of magical power. Violation of the oath will lead to heavenly retribution. This is one of the most taboo things in cultivation. Limu is feeling a little discouraged. Is there a way to quickly enhance one's magical power? At this moment, Li Qing suddenly looked at him. Her expression became extremely serious. At this moment, the sword in her hand also made a clanging sound as it was drawn out. And then it was hung around Limu's neck. Limu shuddered all over unconsciously. He swallowed his saliva and asked somewhat at a loss. Leader, what's going on? Li Qing almost reprimanded as he said, Limu, you must remember, there are no shortcuts in cultivation. Pursuing the taste for speed in cultivation will harm either others or yourself. This is the first time Li Qing has spoken to him in this tone. Limu nodded after a moment of being stunned and said, I understand. Limu patted his chest and assured, Leader, rest assured. Even though my abilities are limited, I will never do anything that harms the principles of heaven and earth. Li Qing paused for a moment, seeming to not recognize the person in front of her. But the charm emanating from Limu was so attractive, to the extent that even the words he said could make people believe without any doubt. After a moment, Li Qing slowly sheathed his sword. He sighed and said, I just don't want you to go astray. The path of cultivation is extremely difficult. Countless cultivators cannot endure the loneliness of cultivation, leading them to take the wrong path. In their pursuit of cultivation, they stop at nothing, stealing souls and consuming others' essence. Such evil cultivators are universally condemned in the cultivation world. No matter how high their cultivation level is, they will not escape punishment. A month ago, an evil cultivator of the inside abstruse realm was jointly killed by experts of the Buddhism and Taoism Liang factions. Not even their soul was left behind. Limu awkwardly scratched his cheek. The cultivation world is indeed very intolerant towards evil cultivation. Li Qing thought for a moment and changed the topic. It was my oversight this time that put you in danger, she said as she handed her own sword to Limu. Take it. This sword is called the Qinghong sword. It is a magical weapon. Carry it with you. You don't need to fear ordinary demons now. Limu hesitated. Leader, you gave it to me. Then what will you do? But Li Qing's tone was unquestionable. You asked me to take it, so I did. Limu had to take her sword. Li Qing then handed over the book in her hand. This book is also for you. It records some things about the cultivation world. Take some time to read it. This is something you should know. After speaking, Li Qing walked ahead. She waved her hand with Limu on her back and said, Although there is this sword and that string of Buddhist prayer beads, but you still need to quickly condense the 7 pua. Limu watched the figure going far away. Suddenly, a wave of emotion surged in his heart. After bidding farewell to Li Qing, Limu realized that he still knew too little about the cultivation world. He immediately leaned against the wall. He couldn't wait to open the book in his hands. The cultivation realms are divided into 3 levels, upper, middle, and lower. The lower 3 realms are smelt pua, congeal hun, and cluster psychic. The middle 3 realms are open psychic, blessing, and inside abstruse. Hundreds of years ago, 100 schools contended. The predecessors of Taoist cultivation collaborated to compile a scripture. This scripture is divided into 2 sections, internal and external, containing numerous secrets of Taoist cultivation. The content of the external section is diverse and widely circulated. The internal section contains rare knowledge that has never been leaked. This book records quite comprehensively, except for the cultivation levels and history of Taoist cultivation. It also records some talismans with special purposes. The Taoist scripture mentioned in the book, the secret scripture of Taoist cultivation, also sounds familiar. Limu sighed. He had never seen the Taoist scripture, but he could recite a few lines from the Tao Te Ching. I wonder if the title of the book was off by a word. Does the content still matter? The Taoism spell uses incantations combined with hand gestures in order to communicate with the power of heaven and earth. Limu awkwardly imitated a hand gesture from a Taoism spell in the book. Afterwards, Limu became somewhat curious. It doesn't look difficult. Then Limu transferred the faint magical power to his hands. Recalling the content of the Tao Te Ching for a moment, he then began to mutter quietly. An indescribable powerful force suddenly emerged from the void. Limu suddenly spurted out a mouthful of blood. Countless dangerous signals exploded in his mind. But immediately after, Limu blacked out. His body fell straight onto the street and completely passed out. At the same time, Yangqiu City Yamen. Li Qing was originally walking along the road just fine. But suddenly, she felt a strange palpitation in her chest. She turned back abruptly, a look of confusion on her face. In a remote village outside Yangqiu City, an elderly Taoist priest is demonstrating calligraphy on white paper to several peasant women. The crowd gathers around to watch. Suddenly, he shudders and looks up at the sky abruptly. His eyes widen in shock. White Cloud Mountain in North County. In the current Taoist cultivation, there are 3 factions and 3 sects. Among them, the talisman-making faction's ancestral home is located at the peak of Bayun Mountain. The grand buildings are like palaces lined up in rows. Rows upon rows of grand buildings. They are faintly visible in the mist. Human shadows can vaguely be seen within the palatial buildings. A sudden jarring bell ringing shattered the silence. The fog in the mountains also began to churn restlessly. It seemed to be boiling. Each hall was in an uproar. No one knew what had happened. A person pointing in the direction of Yangqiu City said, "Why is the bell ringing without reason? Could it be that a new Taoism spell has emerged?" Countless breaking wind noises arise. Hundreds of disciples rush towards the main hall on flying swords. An old man with white beard, full of immortal spirit and Taoist temperament, suddenly appeared in front of everyone. "I have seen the sect leader. I have seen the sect leader," said the middle-aged Taoist as he walked forward with a look of doubt. What exactly happened? Why did the Taoist temple bell suddenly ring? An ancient and simple page suddenly floated in his palm above. Everyone saw the page. Faces showed expressions of reverence. This page is a fragment of a Taoist scripture. It records many Taoism spells. It is the foundation of the talisman-making faction. It is called the Taoist page. The Taoist page that they usually regard as a sacred object. But at this moment, it is making a rustling sound, as if it is trembling. It stirred up a chaos in the spiritual energy of this place. It's unclear how long has passed. The chaotic spiritual energy around slowly settled down. The Taoist page in the old man's hand also gradually calmed down. The Taoist scripture trembled, revealing something unheard of before. It is unknown whether it is a blessing or a disaster. Lu Hanyan and the little maid walked out of the gate. The little maid glanced over and pointed to the ground on one side of the door in surprise. There lay a person there, in the room filled with a fragrant smell. Limu woke up slowly, vaguely heard Lu Hanyan saying something. "Wan, you go to the pharmacy with the doctor to get the medicine." Then he remembered that he was using the Tao Te Ching instead of the Taoist scripture. There was a little accident when trying to cast the Taoism spell. He couldn't even say the first sentence, "The Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao." He vomited blood and fainted at the doorstep of his house. "You fainted outside just now. We called a doctor for you." Limu got off the bed and sincerely thanked everyone. "Thank you, young lady." He originally thought Lu Hanyan was petty and narrow-minded. Unexpectedly, her mind is as broad as her chest. She was able to let go of past grievances and lend a helping hand. It was actually a petty and mean-spirited act on their part. This made Limu feel extremely ashamed. Lu Hanyan waved a hand. "You can't just stand by and watch someone die, right? The doctor's consultation and medication fees still need to be paid by you. I've already paid on your behalf earlier. Just give the money to me directly." Limu reached into his belt pouch and asked. Lu Hanyan chuckled. "The consultation fee is 1 coin. Limu breathed a sigh of relief. 1 coin is not expensive. How much is the cost of medicine? Lu Hanyan took out an abacus from somewhere. After a series of clattering and clicking sounds, the medicine costs 10 taels. Limu was taken aback for a moment. Thinking he misheard, Limu said, "My monthly salary is only 500 coins. Are you sure about what you just said?" Lu Hanyan handed him several packets of medicine and the prescription. "This is the prescription. If you don't believe it, you can go to the pharmacy to inquire," said Lu Hanyan. Limu took the prescription in disbelief. Just a few packets of medicine actually cost 10 taels of silver. How could a few doses of medicine be so expensive? "Miss Lu, you're not being deceived, are you? But then again, she just saved you. It's not nice to make fun of her. I should take a look at what medicine is so expensive. Isn't it just Panax Nodo ginseng that's been aged for 100 years? Top-grade deer antler and 70-year-old fleece flower root." Limu looked at the prescription and her voice gradually lowered. After a long time, Limu gritted her teeth and said, "Damn those unscrupulous medicine merchants. It must have been the doctor who took advantage of Limu's unconscious state. Take advantage of the opportunity to promote these valuable medicinal materials. Unscrupulous doctors and unscrupulous drug dealers collude to specifically deceive kind-hearted individuals like Lu Hanyan, an innocent woman with a lot of money who is a bit naive. She accidentally fell into the trap they set up. It's not all her fault. But the problem is I, Limu, don't have a single hair on me. He looked embarrassed and said, I don't have that much money now. Lu Hanyin waved his hand. I don't know where he pulled out a pin from. You can write an IOU first. You are a constable, you shouldn't default on payment, right? Limu couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He was already as poor as can be. Carelessly, he has again incurred a debt of a whopping 10 liang. With his monthly earnings of only 500 coins. He doesn't even have enough for his own living expenses. He doesn't know when he will be able to pay it off. Limu walked out in dismay, holding the IOU in hand. I have other things to do. Lu Hanyin smiled sweetly and nodded. At this moment, it was really hard to tell if she was intentionally teasing Limu or if she truly was a silly and innocent person. Coming out of the Lu family's residence, Limu first went to the pharmacy. He slammed the medicine package heavily on the pharmacy counter. He stood with his hands on his hips and started shouting angrily. The shopkeeper saw someone causing trouble. He actually calm and collectedly took a sip of tea. Then his fingers started tapping on the abacus. Finally, he shook his head helplessly and said, It's not that we won't retreat. It's just that these medicinal materials are all mixed together. There's no way to retreat at all. Limu snorted coldly. He heavily slapped the countertop to vent his dissatisfaction. This is a malicious, fraudulent behavior. Whether you believe it or not, I will report it to the authorities. The shopkeeper remained calm and composed. You can't say that. The old man told that girl at that time. The pharmacy has top-quality medicine, medium-quality medicine, and low-quality medicine. It was that girl who insisted on choosing the top-quality one. The shop operates with integrity and would never engage in such deceitful behavior. At this moment, he still doesn't understand what's going on. He is just a big fool. This is revenge. This is naked revenge. That woman did it on purpose. But what else can Limu do? He can only go about with a black face from one place to another. Limu underestimated her generosity. What a petty-minded person can do. This money must be repaid as soon as possible. Otherwise, in front of Lu Hanyin, you will always feel inferior. Limu temporarily stopped thinking about the money matter. He did not forget. The real culprit behind all of this is actually himself. More precisely, he replaced the Tao Te Ching with the Dao Jing. Trying to wield the way of the Tao, he ended up suffering backlash. The more powerful the Taoism spell, the higher the requirements for the cultivation level of the practitioner. By the same token, mild injury or death, insufficient cultivation level will backfire. Even though I just took a tour around the gates of the underworld. The paths of these two worlds are somewhat interconnected. The Tao Te Ching can completely replace the true words of the Tao scripture to resonate with the heavens and earth. However, Limu's current strength is too weak to comprehend the mysteries within. I wonder if there are other options besides the Tao Te Ching. Do other classics of Taoism have the effect of true words? Limu quickly returned home. He took out the talisman Li Qing gave him last time and pasted it on his forehead. After a moment of coolness passed, some forgotten memories began to resurface. Limu quickly picked up pen and paper to write vigorously. The Great Way is formless. It gives birth to heaven and earth. The Great Way is ruthless. It moves the sun and moon. The Great Way is nameless. It nurtures all things. I do not know its name. Naming it the Way is just naming words. It is the Way. The divine incantation of the three primeval heavens was only copied 1/3 of it. The seal talisman has become dim and dull, clearly losing its effectiveness. He put away the talisman seal that had depleted spiritual power. This talisman is extremely useful to him. Next time you should ask Li Qing for more of these talismans, or simply learn how to draw talismans yourself. Limu is also very curious about this. The copying is almost done. Which one to use for the experiment is a question that needs to be considered. Just in case, he still needs to make some preparations in advance. Limu thought for a moment. Soon he thought of a person. It is said that a distant relative is not as good as a close neighbor. There is a gluttonous little girl next door. Limu smirked. A fire started in the yard again. The small yard was filled with the smell of barbecue. The aroma inevitably wafted next door. Busy Wanwan suddenly paused. Her delicate nose twitched a few times. The saliva uncontrollably flowed down. It was that familiar scent again. At this moment, Limu also saw that little head. Drooling with starry eyes, looking at himself. Has Miss Wanwan eaten? Wanwan pouted and shook her head. She felt a bit embarrassed but didn't want to leave just yet. Limu smiled at the sight and said, Then come over and have some food together. The girl had no hesitation at all in agreeing to Limu's invitation to have a meal together. She had been eyeing the wall hungrily just now. Naturally, she could not resist the temptation of delicious food, even though she had said so before. The better looking a man is, the more likely he is to deceive people. But no matter how you look at him, he doesn't seem like a liar. He is also the only neighbor who would take her out for dinner. I don't know why she doesn't like him. Limu is grilling meat. How old are you this year? Wanwan replied ambiguously while eating. 16. Where is your home? I forgot. When did you start following your miss? At 5 years old. Limu was a bit speechless, basically asking a question and she answers one. Eyes blinking non-stop while staring at the grilled meat. Only after getting closer to her did Limu speak. Wanwan, you go ahead and eat first. If something happens to me later, can I trouble you to go to the county government office and bring Liqing girl here? The girl, without lifting her head, asked in confusion. What could happen? Vomiting blood, fainting, or something like that? Absolutely certain. You didn't see it today. I'm worried that I might faint again in a moment. The girl nodded and continued to focus on the delicious food in front of her. Limu walked to the side and sat down cross-legged. 2 or more handprints are needed to perform the combination. He opened the introductory book given to him by Liqing. After looking at the first handprint, he took a deep breath and pinched his fingers into a gesture. Read it out loud. Murmured softly. The universe is boundless. Life continues without any noticeable changes around. Limu also feels fine. He continues to try the next one, but it is still not right. He tries more than 10 in a row with no response. Limu begins to suspect if something went wrong. He changes to another hand seal called the Big Dipper seal. The world is boundless. Life goes on. End of the conversation. Suddenly, a powerful force emerged in the void like gathering thunder. The signs of wind and clouds also changed drastically at this moment. A vast and overwhelming energy rushed towards Limu. In an instant, it enveloped his entire body. Limu's face turned pale instantly. His body fell straight down. The girl was focused on eating grilled meat. She heard a strange noise behind her. She turned her head and looked back. Her pretty face instantly changed. She hastily swallowed the food in her mouth and ran towards Limu. Li Gongzi fainted again when he checked that Limu was still alive. Lu Hanyan hurriedly ran over from the next room. She saw Limu lying on the ground unconscious, without bothering to inquire why her maid was here. Wanwan, go quickly and fetch the doctor. Wanwan, go quickly and fetch the doctor. Limu heard the word doctor. Stopped the master and servant from wanting to find the doctor. Limu said with difficulty, please don't call the doctor. He stood up trembling, to show that he was really fine. The doctor has already made him Tinliang. He is still not debt-free even after being sold to Lu Hanyan. Lu Hanyan looked at him suspiciously and said, are you really okay? Limu originally wanted to deny it, but suddenly sensed a unique emotion from Lu Hanyan. He activated his magic power on his eyes and saw a faint white light radiating from her body. 7 emotions, 7 colors. And white represents the emotion of sadness. Sadness, sorrow, mourning, and compassion can all evoke the emotion of sadness. Does Lu Hanyan think he has a terminal illness? Did he feel compassion for himself? Limu immediately dispelled the thought of denial. Timely guided that trace of grief. Under Lu Hanyan's gaze, Limu let out a soft sigh, lowered his head slowly, and said, you still figured it out? Lu Hanyan's lips quivered. You really are. Limu nodded. Then, look up at the sky at a 45-degree angle. I only have half a year to live at most. Lu Hanyan's feet softened and involuntarily threw himself at Limu. Didn't the doctor say your pulse was steady? Limu self-deprecatingly smiled. Would a healthy person faint twice in one day? In fact, I'm not actually someone who sleeps in. It's just that the illness makes me unable to sleep at night. I can only fall asleep close to dawn each day. That's why I wake up a little later. Lu Hanyan's face showed a look of self-blame.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to do it yesterday, Limu said indifferently. I have already let go of it. Since we cannot change it, we can only choose to accept it. Try to live each day well, but rest assured, I will repay you the 10 liang of silver I owe you before I die, Lu Hanyan said with her mouth slightly open. Finally, she lowered her head guiltily and said, in fact, it was intentional on my part to have the doctor use those precious medicinal herbs. You don't need to return the 10 taels of silver. If you encounter any difficulties in the future, you can always come to me for help. Without waiting for Limu to speak, Lu Hanyan turned around and left, pulling the reluctant young maid along in a hurry. Limu watched her leave with a guilty expression. He sighed inwardly. He used to be an honest and trustworthy young man too. But he was forced into this by the damn fate. Shameless scumbag using terminal illness as an excuse to gain women's sympathy. Anyway, sighing won't change anything. He still needs to seek sympathy. After all, sorrow is harder to obtain than joy and anger. If you want to condense the essence of Cain and rejuvenate the true nature of a man, unable to leave without the neighbor with a heart of empathy, Limu tidied up his mood, picked up the books on the floor. It seems that this family classic is indeed useful. Should I try the 9-word mantra next? 3 days passed in a flash. The talisman-making faction at the main peak of Bayun Mountain. The dull sound of the bell rang out. The people sitting cross-legged around the ancient bell suddenly raised their heads. Here it comes again. How many times has the Taoist bell rung now? Everyone was stunned. In the past few decades, I have heard the bell ringing many times, but I have never heard it as much as in the last 3 days. The Taoist bell rang a total of 18 times. Could this bell be broken? It is impossible for so many new Taoist spells to appear at the same time. It must be that the Taoist bell is broken. The people next to the ancient bell all have bloodshot eyes. Over the past 3 days, their spirits have been extremely tense. All their emotions have been stirred by the Taoist bell in front of them. They saw a scene that they hadn't seen in decades of cultivation. The Taoist pages tremble. The Taoist bell rings incessantly. The Taoist bell that hasn't rung for 3 years in the past. It rang a total of 18 times. Just as everyone was in a state of panic, the Tao bell in front of them buzzed again. The moonlight was bright. Limu sat cross-legged in the middle of the courtyard. Continue to refine the anger and sadness absorbed from Lu Hanyan. During these 3 days, he has not heard Lu Hanyan practicing singing in the yard in the morning for these 3 days. This is after learning that Limu is seriously ill and will not live long. Lu Hanyan's attitude towards Limu has changed drastically. Consequently, Limu can't afford to provoke her and trigger her anger again. After processing the emotions absorbed in the past 2 days, he will have to come up with another plan. The time has come to midnight. Limu's gaze fell on the door, only to see it bathed in moonlight. A thick, ink-black mist swiftly seeped in through the crack of the door. The shadow formed by the condensing mist rolled and shifted unpredictably. An extremely resentful voice rang out. For 3 days. Do you have any idea what I've been through these past 3 days? A black mist coalesced into a figure in the courtyard. That darn monk. Let me hear him recite scriptures for 3 days. 3 days. I listened for a whole 3 days. Do you know how it feels? Fortunately, my cultivation level has made a breakthrough again. I escaped while the monk wasn't paying attention. Thanks to you. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Tonight I swallowed your hunpa. Not even Jesus can save you. That's what I said. After a few sharp screams, the evil spirit rushed towards Limu. At this moment, the rosary in Limu's hand suddenly emitted a bright golden light. The Qinghong sword by his side began to tremble even more violently. Limu did not stand up. He closed his eyes slowly and made a gesture. His hands clasped tightly together, with the index fingers extended and touching each other. Preparation complete. At the same time, he softly exhaled from his mouth. Ready. As soon as the words fell, the night sky in the courtyard suddenly turned into daylight. A dazzling thunderbolt instantly struck down. Next to the evil spirit, a small piece of ground was highlighted. Rumbling. A charred pit was split open. Limu stood up slowly and said gloomily, "So annoying. Missed the target again?" The demon was sweating coldly at this moment. It unconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Then it jumped up immediately. With a thud, it knelt in front of Limu. Trembling, it said with a quivering voice, "Please spare me, sir. The little one just made a mistake in recognizing people earlier. The little one will take his leave now. Thank you for your trouble. Do not disturb your cultivation." After speaking, he swiftly swept out of Limu's courtyard like a thunderstorm, disappeared instantly into the distance. Limu was a bit speechless. He slipped away really quickly. Let's leave you a way out for now. One reason is that the speed of that ghostly fog is extremely fast. He simply couldn't catch up. Another reason is that his mastery of this true statement is not thorough enough. Otherwise, that last blow would have been able to scatter the ghost hun. Limu glanced at the deep pit on the ground. At this moment, there was a faint blue light shimmering. This should be the fear left behind by the evil spirit just now. Limu guided those fears into his own body. Not a bit was wasted. The power of thunder magic far exceeded his expectations. But he still needs more practice. Next time he encounters these things, he won't let them get away so easily. But refining the 7 pur is the top priority now. Limu stretched lazily and murmured. Speaking of which, Zhang Shan's body should have recovered as well. Then he changed his expression. It looks like I should go visit him tomorrow. Soon it was morning of the next day. Limu went straight to the county office. The 7 issues remained unresolved, which was always a burden on his mind. Limu originally wanted to go to Old Man Wang's place to inquire and find opportunities to gather the 7 emotions. But as soon as he entered the yamen, he saw Zhang Shan yawning. Limu stepped forward and said, "Why are you daydreaming, Zhang Shan?" Zhang Shan saw that it was Limu who had come. He immediately became more alert. He immediately stepped forward and whispered, "Why did you come so early today? Do you want to gamble a bit?" Limu squinted his eyes. "I was just thinking about how to bring it up." This guy came up by himself. Limu coughed twice at the thought. Okay, just happened to have nothing to do. Let's play a couple of rounds then. Soon the room was filled with a sense of joy. Limu naturally absorbed all of it without wasting any. Zhang Shan asked in confusion. Limu, why is it so exhausting every time I gamble with you? Bet with you once. I don't have the energy to pay taxes to the government at night. Now my wife suspects me of having a mistress outside all the time. I spent most of last night proving my innocence. Limu glanced at him and said softly, if you're tired, let's stop here for today. At this moment, the people on duty were suddenly pushed open by someone. The two looked over in confusion. They saw Li Si walking quickly in from outside. Urgently said, stop playing around. Follow me. The constables of the county yamen are official employees with a structured system in the great Zhou Dynasty. They also have the responsibilities of police officers and criminal investigators. Limu asked Li Si while running, why are you in such a hurry? Naturally, this also attracted the attention of the surrounding people. Li Si shook his head quickly while taking fast steps. I don't know. Han, the one surnamed Han, called us over. Let's hurry up and go. The leader is not here. We will be scolded if we arrive late again. Li Si mentioned the one surnamed Han. His name is Hanja. Li Qing is from the same sect. He is also one of the cultivators at the county yamen. Most of these cultivators come from prestigious sections. They enter the county yamen to gain experience. They often look down on ordinary people like Limu and Zhang Shan. Of course, Limu and Zhang Shan are not very fond of them either. Li Qing is not available. Limu and Zhang Shan are temporarily under his command. Ordinary constables can handle routine cases. This time, the county yamen has dispatched a cultivator. I suppose it should not be an ordinary case. Soon, several people arrived at the Zhao residence. A young man in Chinese clothing stood outside the county office. He glanced at Zhang Shan and Li Mu who were hurrying over. Sneering coldly. Hurry up, both of you. Stop dawdling. It's just the two of you left. Speak up and lead the way into the Luo mansion. Li Si muttered behind. See, I knew it. Li Mu immediately made a silent gesture. Hanja walked to the front of Zhao mansion and said. He knocked on the door. The person next to him immediately gestured with his hand, then walked to the front. He knocked heavily on the mansion door. But just at this moment, the gate of the Zhao mansion suddenly opened from inside. Several monks and Taoist priests were driven out of the Zhao mansion by the servants. Blind fools, dare to deceive our Zhao mansion. Hurry up and get out of here. If you don't leave, I'll break your dog legs. The several Taoist monks fled in panic. Hanja turned to the middle-aged steward of the Zhao's residence and asked, Did you report the case? The middle-aged steward heard this. Immediately, he impatiently started to rebuke. It's not over yet, huh? At this moment, Hanja said in a low voice, Blind your dog eyes. Can't you see my clothes? The middle-aged butler paused. At this point, he also saw the person in front of him clearly. He immediately changed his attitude and apologized with a smile. Master Immortal, I am short-sighted and didn't recognize Mount Tai. Please come in. Follow me. Limu looked at Zhang Shan and asked, Shall we go in too? But at this time, the middle-aged butler reached out and stopped them. Hold on. You guys just wait here. What else can you say? It's fine to come all the way here and have no water to drink. Now we can't even get into the government office. Zhang Shan spat contemptuously and said, Just because she's hooked up with the county magistrate. What's so great about that? Even the servants are pretending for me. Zhang Shan suddenly looked at Li Si and said, Old Li, why don't you trouble yourself and try to seduce the daughter of the magistrate? That way we will also have a backer. Li Si calmly brushed off his hand. I'm not interested in her. Li Mu looked at the several constables and asked, What exactly happened to the Zhao family? The constable looked around and then whispered softly. The young master of the Zhao family somehow fell under an evil influence. Zhang Shan gasped when he heard this. The crowd quickly made a gesture for silence. Zhang Shan was almost scared out of his wits. The constable continued speaking. His marriage with the magistrate's daughter is approaching. If this matter is not handled well, the magistrate will definitely hold someone accountable. County Magistrate Zhang also attaches great importance to this case. Several figures emerged from the mansion. Leading the way was Hanja, followed by a middle-aged couple. Both of them had anxious and worried expressions on their faces. They were supporting a young man wearing only an undershirt. The young man was handsome, but had a silly smile on his face. The saliva at the corners of the mouth was not wiped off, and he just kept laughing silly. Li Si was surprised. He whispered to himself, He really is under a spell. I have seen him on the street before, and he wasn't like this back then.
Limu's gaze slightly sharpened.
Although he couldn't see through a person's hidden thoughts. But based on the description in that introductory book, it is clear that the young master from the Zhao family has lost one of his spirits. People have 3 spirits. 1 is named Taiguang. 2 is named Shuangling. 3 is named Yujing. The first spirit, Hun Taiguang, is the true nature of innate nature. The second spirit, Hun Shuangling, is the god of consciousness responsible for thinking and mentality. The third spirit, Hun Yujing, is the main interest and tendency. Among the 3 spirits, Taiguang is the fate spirit. If Taiguang leaves the body, the person will immediately lose consciousness and fall into a coma. Shuangling is in charge of the mind. Losing Shuangling, a person will become foolish and dull, with a mentality like that of a 3-year-old child. And losing the third Hun Yujing will cause one to lose interest in anything. The young master of the Zhao family inexplicably became dull and foolish. Obviously, he has lost the second Hun. There are 2 possible reasons for the separation of the 3 Hun. One is that they leave the body automatically when scared. The second is being taken away by people or demons. I don't know which one Zhao Gongzi belongs to. Hanja turned around and said to the middle-aged couple, "Bring cinnabar and a brush." Soon the servants prepared the things he requested. They brought them over nervously. Zhang Shan whispered, "Han leader is going to draw a talisman again." Hanja dipped a brush in cinnabar and drew a strange talisman character on the forehead of the young master of the Zhao family. Then he formed hand seals with both hands. His lips seemed to be trembling, but it was unclear what was being said. The forehead of Master Zhao suddenly emanated brilliant golden light. Hanja suddenly issued a stern shout. "Hun has returned. The soul of Zhaoyong has returned." However, the development of the situation... it doesn't seem to be as Hanja expected. Hanja stood in front of the foolish Zhaoyong, chanting the love spell repeatedly. Until he was nearly exhausted, he still couldn't recall the second Hun of Zhaoyong. The middle-aged man hurriedly stepped forward and asked, "Immortal, are you okay?" Hanja waved his hand and said, "I'm fine, just a bit dizzy. It will be fine in a while." Hanja furrowed his brow and whispered, "His second Hun has not dispersed yet. I could sense its presence when he summoned it just now. But I don't know its specific location," the middle-aged man said anxiously. "What should we do next?" Hanja thought for a moment and said, "Get a piece of yellow paper. Take a strand of Zhaoyong's hair." The middle-aged man quickly asked someone to bring the yellow paper. "Rearrange the cinnabar and brush," Hanja said. "Bring Zhaoyong's hair as well. I will freely make use of it." Madame immediately handed over her son's hair. Hanja picked it up. Fingers gently twisted. Those strands of hair suddenly burst into flames. Soon it turned into ashes. The ashes from the hair fell neatly on the cinnabar. Hanja mixed them together. Then he placed the yellow paper on the table. He took a deep breath and picked up the brush. The brush strokes were like dragons and snakes. He painted a complex talisman on the paper in one go. Limu's heart stirred. He had seen this kind of talisman seal in that book before. This kind of celestial guide talisman can search for demons and ghosts. I never thought it could also be used to find Hun. Draw the talisman seal well. Hanja folded it into the shape of a paper crane. After inputting magic power, the paper crane slowly began to flap its wings. It flew a circle around Zhaoyong. Then it flew towards the outside of the Zhao family's residence. The people at the Zhao residence were amazed when they saw it. Hanja smiled. It seems like he has found the second soul of Zhaoyong. Then he ordered, "All of you come with me. Follow the paper crane." Limu knows the principle of the immortal guides the way, talisman. Just now, Hanja mixed Zhaoyong's hair into cinnabar. This talisman seal contains Zhaoyong's breath. This kind of breath is attracted to Zhaoyong's Hunpa. It will follow the trajectory of his second Hun. Find the location of the second Hun. It's just that the paper crane flies very slowly. At this speed, I don't know when we will be able to find Zhaoyong's Hun. A few people are following the paper crane. We circled around the county town for a long time. The paper crane circled out of the city gate again and headed west. As the sky was getting dark, they had already left the county town for more than 10 miles. Except for Hanja, everyone's face showed exhaustion and impatience. Hanja saw that they had all stopped. Some impatiently said, "Hurry up and keep up. It shouldn't be far now." Limu took a sip of water. She said with a hint of exhaustion, "We are just mortals. Our physical abilities can't compare to you immortal cultivators." At that moment, Detective Kwai suddenly exclaimed, "Look, this paper crane has stopped moving." Hanja raised his eyes to look. Sure enough, he saw the paper crane floating in the air, no longer moving forward, but spinning in place. This means Zhaoyong's soul is nearby. But the more he thought about it, the more unsettled he became. He angrily shouted, "Be careful." But it was too late. Limu had just taken a step. The scenery in front of him suddenly changed drastically. In the previous moment, the sky was only slightly darkening. Suddenly, it turned pitch black. You couldn't see your fingers when you raised your hand. Looking up, you couldn't see the stars all over the sky. There wasn't any sound in your ears. Limu was surprised. Could this be an optical illusion? I remember the book saying that you should concentrate your magic power in your eyes. Limu quickly formed hand seals and followed the instructions in the book. The next moment, Limu saw Zhongshan Li Si and others. They looked fearful and reached out their hands. While groping in the void, they spun around in place. Hanja snorted coldly. I knew it. Zhao Yong's soul inexplicably leaving the body must be caused by demonic influence. Where is the demon lord? Why don't you show yourself quickly? Hanja's voice seemed to contain a certain strange power. He clasped his hands together. He murmured for a moment. Then he shouted loudly. Countless thunders erupted from his body, sharply pierced through the darkness around him. Just for a moment, something like a barrier shattered. Zhongshan Li Si and the others regained the light. At this moment, Li Si exclaimed, What is that? As Li Si's voice fell, they also saw a faint figure not far ahead. The moment that illusionary figure appeared, it seems that even the temperature around has dropped a few degrees. Limu was startled. Judging from the aura emanating from that illusion, it is undoubtedly a ghostly creature. And it's not like the sinister imp from the Zhangwang clan. The Yin energy surrounding her gathers instead of disperses. Although not as powerful as the evil spirit Limu encountered twice before, it is definitely not to be taken lightly. Hurry up and hand over Zhao Yong's soul. The female ghost does not speak, but instead opens her mouth and spews out a breath of Yin energy. The Yin energy transforms into several black snakes in mid-air, directly hitting the face and head, coming straight at Hanja.
Hanji snorted coldly.
Facing the sinister black serpent rushing towards him, Hanja emitted an invisible ripple reverberating around him. With a loud shout from him, the ripples around him spread out in an instant in all directions. The moment they touched the several black snakes, the black snakes were actually directly shattered. They turned back into Yin energy and could no longer condense. The sight invigorated the group of constables. Limu was secretly surprised. The fluctuations of spiritual power around his body were obvious. I'm afraid the lowest level is also at the second realm of Congeal Hun cultivation. Although Resentment Imp also belongs to the second realm of demon cultivation, it is at the same level as the third realm. Demons and ghosts are simply unable to compare with cultivators. The strength of this female ghost is even less than the one Limu encountered after the black serpent was defeated. Seemingly realizing she was no match for the person before her, the female ghost swiftly retreated. Hanja said in a deep voice, You want to run because you can't win? Then I'll play with you some more. What are you all standing still for? Zhongshan became a little unhappy. The sky gradually darkened. The bright moon hangs high in the sky. A group of people are still trying hard to catch up. In these remote and desolate fields, there are few signs of human presence. In front is Bisui Water Bay. Limu's expression changed slightly at the mention. Baishui Water Bay sounds somewhat familiar. Suddenly, his pupils constricted. In his heart, he cursed wildly at this moment. Baishui Water Bay, isn't it the place where Old Man Wang talked about a haunted by water ghost? Could it be talking about this female ghost? There is a folk legend that the souls of those who committed suicide by drowning or died accidentally by drowning will linger at the place where they drowned. Water ghosts die because of water. They patiently wait and lure in the water. Or they directly pull living people down to drown at the bottom of the water. They act as substitutes for themselves in order to seek reincarnation. The people who are killed by water ghosts will become new water ghosts and repeat this process. Hanja formed hand seals with both hands, shouting angrily, Where can you escape, evil obstacle? A golden light shot towards the female ghost. The female ghost's heart trembled greatly, but it was already too late to avoid it. With a mournful scream, everyone took a look. The golden light shot straight through its body. The female ghost's figure tumbled out from the void. It fell onto the grass by the poolside and struggled a few times, but it couldn't stand up again, clearly on the brink of collapse. Then transformed in the blink of an eye. Hanja took out a bagua mirror from his arms and gently shook it towards the female ghost. At that moment, the female ghost's body began to tremble wildly. A shadowy figure separated from the female ghost's body. Vaguely recognizable as a man, Hanja looked down coldly at the female ghost. It's not easy to transform into demon cultivation. It's even more rare to reach the second realm of cultivation. Now, you're actually resorting to seducing Hunper for the sake of cultivation. Keeping you in this world is a disaster. Today, I will uphold justice on behalf of the heavens. He took out a talisman and ignited it in his hand. But before he could make a move, suddenly, a gentle breeze blew in from the surface of the lake. The gentle breeze passed by. The talisman burning in Hanja's hand suddenly extinguished. At the same time, Zhongshan exclaimed in fear, Be careful. There is something in the water. Hanja looked towards the surface of the water. Just then, a woman in white clothes with long hair appeared. She slowly walked out from the water. The woman was wearing a white dress. The woman in white clothes stepped out of the water step by step. Following that was a faint fragrance. Am I beautiful? The voice of the woman in white clothes was extremely soft and charming. It made people's hearts tremble involuntarily. In an instant, Limu's mind lost its guard and the scene in his eyes suddenly changed. He appeared in a beautiful valley full of blooming flowers. Birds chirped in the valley, and butterflies danced in the air. And in front of him were more than 10 women dressed in gauzy skirts. These women varied in body shapes and sizes, but each one was exceptionally beautiful. They were either pure or charming. Some were elegant, some were demure, some were passionate, and some were aloof. As they danced, the thin gauzy skirts on the women's bodies slipped off one by one. In Limu's heart, a certain desire began to grow wildly. He couldn't suppress it no matter what. Limu suddenly woke up. He inwardly felt that things were not good. What a powerful illusion. Limu immediately reacted, pinching the tactic and silently reciting in his mind. If the mind is clear as ice, the sky collapsing won't startle me. Even amidst 10,000 changes, I remain steadfast, tranquil and peaceful in mind and spirit. At the moment when the words fell, Limu also regained consciousness. The instinctive impulse was gone. The moment Limu regained consciousness, Andal was glad that he also learned the 9-character mantra when he was learning the mind-clearing decision. At this moment, Limu saw Hanja continuing to walk ahead with a charming woman. Limu was instantly stunned. Isn't this over? Even Han was captivated. Li Si looked at Limu with a puzzled expression and asked, Am I dreaming? Limu's face was instantly full of joy. He pinched his face with his hand. Limu asked in shock, I want to confirm if the person in front of me is real. Li Si asked, Are you okay? What could be wrong with me? Limu replied in disbelief. Are you not moved? Li Si said disdainfully. Moved? Then he pushed away the woman who had approached him. He said lightly, Is this all? The woman's movement suddenly paused. She gritted her teeth in secret. Don't be too smug, kid, she said, raising her hands above her head after speaking. She covered her face with the wide cuffs of her sleeves, then swiftly changed. She transformed into a delicate-looking young girl. The girl was wearing a plain long dress, covering her body very securely, in sharp contrast to those women who were dressed revealingly just now. Does not arouse the slightest sexual desire in men. But at the moment when this young girl appeared, the expression on Li Si's face suddenly froze. Limu's expression changed. Although I don't know who the young girl is, it is clear that Li Si is in a very dangerous situation. There is a possibility that he could sink into a fantasy world at any time. Limu wants to stop him, but he found that his body seemed to be restrained by something. He watched helplessly as Li Si disappeared into the illusion. In this valley, only Limu was left in the end. And those women who had just disappeared reappeared in front of Limu. A plump woman approached Limu and gently exhaled a fragrance to him. In a soft voice, she asked, Am I beautiful? Limu replied calmly,
I'm sorry.
I have prosopagnosia. I don't know if you are beautiful or not. The woman with a charming voice said with a fragrant breath. Young master is good at joking. Who is beautiful, me or your wife?
Saw thee.
I am still single. The woman continued to caress Limu's chest with one hand and smiled seductively as she asked, The scenery here is beautiful. Would the young master be willing to have some fun with me and my sisters? Limu sighed inwardly. He enjoys doing fun things in life, but his physical condition does not allow it. He shook his head in thought and spoke solemnly, Young lady, please behave yourself. The woman's face suddenly showed anger. She pushed Limu away. She shouted loudly, I don't believe it. Men are all lustful creatures. How could someone remain chaste when temptation is at hand? You must be lying to me. Limu suddenly regained control of his body. The great humiliation made him extremely angry, causing a stormy rage in his heart. The 6 golden rings on his hand were already halfway closed. The character Lean was almost spat out from his throat. Suddenly, something resembling a barrier shattered. The surrounding scenery also began to change. Limu felt a little confused. What's going on? I haven't finished my mantra. It seems to have turned back into Baishui Water Bay again. At this moment, a delicate voice came from behind him. I am here. The woman in white clothes with long hair greeted Limu gracefully. Apologetically, she said, I used to think that all men in this world are unfaithful and heartless. I used to see only lust and desire in men's eyes. I didn't expect there are gentlemen in this world who are not tempted by it. It was my mistake earlier. I apologize to the gentleman here. Limu opened his mouth. He felt that this woman was scolding him without evidence. He had even formed a hand seal. Suddenly she became polite again. It made him feel awkward, unable to speak out his discomfort. The woman in white clothes with long hair said, This maiden is Sewer. May I ask how should the young master address me? Limu stared at her. Suddenly, he found it difficult to understand the intentions of this female ghost. He looked around in all directions. Zhang Shan, Li Si, Hanja, and others were lying on the ground in a mess. But they were all just unconscious. There should be no serious problem. I don't know why the white-clad female ghost is obstructing them from handling the case. What exactly is it for? Limu asked tentatively. I am Limu. May I ask if Miss Su can let go of my colleagues? The female ghost named Suicide and replied. I have been in Baishui Water Bay for 20 years. I have never harmed anyone's life. They are just unconscious. They will wake up tomorrow. Limu suddenly understood. A female ghost with a cultivation level of 20 years. It's normal that Hanja is not her opponent. Limu looked at her and asked again. I wonder why the girl is preventing us from getting rid of this seductive ghost Hunpa? Sewer replied softly. The young master only knows the consequence of her seducing Hun, but not the reason why she snatched Hun away. Limu was startled. Could there be some hidden truth in this? He had felt that the female ghost was somewhat strange just now, although there was a ghostly aura around her. However, she did not give off a sinister feeling. However, the ghostly creatures practicing Hunpa cultivation often have a strong malevolent aura. Could there be hidden secrets among them? Sewer asked. Young master, do you know who she is? Limu shook his head. Sewer continued speaking. Sewer's words were shocking. Her name is Lin Wan. She is Zhao Yong's fiancée. She and Zhao Yong have been engaged since they were young. Originally, they were supposed to get married next year. However, a few months ago, Zhao Yong caught the eye of the county magistrate. He got involved with the county magistrate. Zhao Yong's future naturally looked bright. However, he already had an engagement. The Zhao family is considered prestigious in Yangqiu City. If one breaks off an engagement to marry the daughter of the county magistrate, not only will it stain one's reputation, it may also block the hard-earned path to promotion. So he chose to go all out and took Lin Wan out under the pretext of traveling. He drowned her in Baishui Water Bay and buried her body on the shore. Lin Wan's parents passed away early, leaving only her in the family. After her death, naturally, no one mentioned the engagement anymore. Sewer passed a bit of energy to Lin Wan, who was on the verge of dispersing, and said, That day, I saw the resentment lingering on the shore for a long time without dispersing. Before her Hunpo dissipated, I condensed her 3 Hun and helped her with cultivation. I passed on some magical techniques to let her seek revenge. However, her cultivation was too shallow. She only captured 1 Hun from Zhaoyou. Limu's sword was tightly gripped by him. For the sake of the future, he killed his own fiancée with his own hands. This is something that a human could never do. He looked at Zhao Yong's soul floating nearby. He forcibly held back the thought of using lightning magic to kill him. After taking a deep breath, his emotions gradually calmed down. If this matter is true, I will report to the authorities and give her justice. Sewer looked at him and asked, Why do you want to help her? Limu thought for a moment and replied, As a constable, seeking justice for the people and eliminating evil is also my responsibility. Sewer sighed and said, There are not many people like gentlemen in this world anymore. What a pity. Lin Wan could not see the end of that beast. Her cultivation level was forcibly raised by me. The foundation is not stable. She was heavily injured by that person just now. She will completely dissipate within a maximum of 1 minute. Limu frowned and asked, Can't you even save her? Sooner shook her head and said, I practice demon cultivation. It's easy to harm others, but hard to save them. Her foundation has already been destroyed. Unless there are high-level practitioners of Buddha cultivation who chant sutras to save and repair her foundation. Otherwise, there will be no way to reverse the situation. After speaking, a faint flame appeared in the palm of the hand. To Lin Wan, he said, Since you cannot see Zhao Yong receive his punishment, I will destroy one of his souls first. He will live in self-pity, doomed to be foolish for his whole life. This is also his retribution. Limu immediately stopped her. Wait. Sewer's face showed displeasure. What's the matter? Limu asked. Zhao Yong has already been engaged to the county magistrate's daughter. The county magistrate values his case very much. If Miss Su destroys this Hun of his, it would be equivalent to declaring war directly on the county yamen and the court. The court has numerous skilled experts. Once investigated, no matter how deep your cultivation level is, you will have a hard time escaping responsibility. However, Sewer remained fearless and coldly smiled. Then let them come. Limu felt a headache upon hearing this and could only change the subject, saying, Let's first figure out a way to save Miss Lin Wan. Sewer shook his head and said, No. Unless you have the power of Buddha cultivation and understand the Buddhist scriptures, being able to manifest the light of universal salvation, you cannot save her. Limu thought that the Buddhist beads given to him by the monk contained the power of Buddha cultivation. By borrowing just a little, he could unleash the Buddha cultivation magical power. But the biggest problem was that he didn't understand the scriptures of Buddha cultivation. Even if he could borrow a bit of Buddha cultivation power, it would be in vain. Limu had second thoughts. Scriptures of Buddha cultivation are Buddhist scriptures. Since the Tao Te Ching can replace the Taoist scriptures, then other Buddha cultivation classics may also be able to substitute for the scriptures of Buddha cultivation. He thought for a moment and said, "Why don't you let me try?" Su'er was surprised and asked, "Do you understand Buddha's teachings?" Limu shook his head and replied, "I don't understand, but you can give it a try." Although Limu has read many Buddhist scriptures, he does not have that talisman seal. He cannot recall a single sentence from scriptures like the Diamond Sutra and the Heart Sutra. The only thing he remembers is the Heart Sutra. After making up his mind, Limu sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, focused, and whispered, "Guan Zizai Pusa. Xing Shun Bor Baluomi Dwashur." Seeing that the 5 aggregates are empty, effectively relieving all suffering.
Ushariputra.
Form is not different from emptiness. Emptiness is not different from form. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Suddenly, Su'er's face changed dramatically, waving her sleeve fiercely and sweeping Lin Wan's soul back several meters. She looked at Limu from a distance, her face showing a look of shock. At this moment, Limu, who was sitting cross-legged on the grass, gradually revealed a golden halo behind him. Late at night, in the temples throughout the North County, countless monks who were reciting scriptures in the Buddha hall suddenly looked up, only to see the golden Buddha statues above them suddenly radiating bright Buddha light, illuminating the entire Buddha hall as if it were daytime. Limu finished reciting the Heart Sutra once, still not feeling any unusual signs. Limu felt a bit disappointed, but when he opened his eyes, suddenly, a strong light pierced, making it impossible to open his eyes. Limu couldn't help but exclaim, "What is shining so brightly?" He was surprised in his heart, thinking that the 2 female ghosts had done something sneaky while he was off guard. Su'er watched him from a distance, exclaimed in surprise, "You even said that you don't understand Buddha's teachings." Limu opened his eyes and saw everything bathed in golden light. He felt like his dog eyes were almost blinded by the brightness. But he also realized that the light seemed to be emanating from his own body. Limu quickly closed his eyes and asked, "How do I control this light?" Su'er was stunned for a moment and asked incredulously, "Don't you know?" Limu helplessly replied, "I just said I was trying it out. Didn't expect it to be like this." After a moment of silence, Su'er finally spoke. "You disperse the Buddha cultivation power in your body." Limu paused. "Is it enough to disperse the power?" With determination, he joined his hands together and chanted, "Disperse." At this moment, the golden light on his body did gradually disappear. His eyes could see again. He never expected that the Buddhist scriptures from another world could replace the scriptures here. Limu felt that his path had widened again. The power of the Heart Sutra is even greater than he imagined. If he possesses the Buddha cultivation power, wouldn't he be like a walking source of light? Wherever he goes, all ghosts submit and demons retreat. Su'er looked at him with extreme doubt. How can someone who is not a practitioner of Buddha cultivation use Buddhist techniques? What is going on with this person? Su'er asked, "How did you learn Buddha cultivation magical power?" Limu was about to say something, but then he saw Lin Wan's body becoming more and more illusory. He immediately said, "This is not important. How can I save Miss Lin Wan?" Su'er withdrew his doubts. "Although I don't understand how you learned to use Buddhist teachings, I choose to believe you once. Buddha cultivation is to cultivate the mind. The light of Buddha can exorcise demons and also save them. As long as you have no thoughts of killing in your heart, you will not harm her. You can try again. Slowly wrap her spiritual body with the light of Buddha." Limu once again guided out a stream of power from the Buddhist beads. Recite the Heart Sutra in a low voice. Soon, the body emitted the light of Buddha again. Limu tried to control them. With a single thought, a beam of light separated from the body, slowly wrapping Lin Wan's spiritual body. When Limu completely enveloped Lin Wan with all the light of Buddha, her body suddenly felt empty and she fell softly. Although these lights were guided by the power in the Buddhist beads, but the consumed power was actually Limu's own. After using it on Lin Wan again, it was completely depleted. However, Limu did not fall to the ground, but instead fell into soft and fragrant arms. Limu twitched and sniffed vigorously. So fragrant. At this moment, he also felt a soft sensation in his hand. Su'er asked with concern, "Are you okay?" This voice instantly brought Limu back to his senses.
I'm fine.
"Just a bit tired. Just rest, that'll be fine." Limu tried to stand up, but he had no strength in his legs. Su'er gently pressed his head against her soft chest and smiled, saying, "It's okay. I am no longer human. There is no distinction between men and women." At this moment, Lin Wan's body has completely solidified. She knelt in front of Limu gratefully and said, "Thank you, Your Excellency, for saving my life." Lin Wan has nothing to offer in return. Limu waved his hand and said, "No need to thank me. Allowing Miss Lin Wan to suffer this injustice is also a dereliction of duty on our part." After saying that, Limu's pupils trembled for a few moments, because there was a lot of gratitude appearing in front of him. All of this was caused by resentment imp Lin Wan. Moreover, there were more than 10 times as many as Wang's women. If the emotions were guided from a person with a very deep cultivation level, Limu can't help but imagine. Suher has already been able to form a physical entity. The cultivation level is at least at the 3rd stage. It's a pity that there are beings with such a deep cultivation level. The 7 emotions generally do not show on the outside. Moreover, with one's own limited cultivation level, it is impossible to guide them. Beings like resentment imp Lin Wan should be Limu's limit. Limu asked, "What are your plans next? Do you plan to continue seeking revenge?" Lin Wan bowed her head and said, "The Zhao family already has a relationship with the county magistrate. No one can touch North County. The nobleman saved my life. I cannot harm the nobleman. I plan to go to the imperial city." Limu said firmly, "I'll take care of this matter. Debts must be paid, and those who kill must face the consequences. Even if you don't seek revenge, I must also bring Zhao Yong to justice." Lin Wan is getting anxious. "Sir, why are you?" Limu resolutely said, "Because I am a constable. I must live up to the uniform I wear." "You don't need to say any more. I have captured Zhao Yong. The county magistrate couldn't detain him either. I told you." Lin Wan is silent at the moment, with tears streaming down her face.
Limu čakal zinvardli.
"After my exposition of righteousness and sternness, this time, I should be able to harvest a lot of gratitude."